How do I know if it's just healthy habits or a full-on eating disorder? I mean, sometimes I pick the salad instead of the burger because I want to lose weight, but is that really disordered eating? If you've ever wondered any of these questions, this video is for you. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Sarah, I'm 16 and I'm recently recovered from an eating disorder, and I make content all about encouraging eating disorder recovery and awareness about the disease itself. I also speak a lot about mental health and self-love. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the differences between wanting to healthily lose weight and having a full-on eating disorder. I think this is a very important topic for two reasons. One, people tend to confuse wanting to lose weight or having an eating disorder. So this, I think, will clarify that and raise awareness about how eating disorders are so much more than just wanting to lose weight or change your body or your eating habits. And number two, if you're concerned that you might have an eating disorder, or if you're concerned that somebody else might have an eating disorder, this video might help you clarify that. Quick disclaimer, I am not a professional by any means, so what I say is based off of my personal opinion and my experience and some of the research that I have done myself on eating disorders. So I think I'm a pretty valid candidate to talk about this subject, but remember, I do not have a degree in absolutely anything. So don't take my words for gold, but please take them for silver. I thought that was pretty funny. I did make that joke before though. Another quick disclaimer, as I've said, I've struggled with an eating disorder, so I do know what is usually triggering versus what's not triggering. So in this video, I have done my very best to make it not triggering at all. However, I am going to be discussing eating disorders, a sensitive topic, so please watch this video at your own discretion. It might not be for you right now, and that's okay. Also, we have a special guest with us today. We have my puppy here joining us on this Christmassy blanket. That's where my mind is already, Christmas. All right, let's get into the video. One of the key differences between someone who wants to healthily lose weight versus someone who has an eating disorder is their motivation behind wanting to change their body. For someone who wants to healthily lose weight, their motivation behind wanting to lose weight is usually health, fitness, or appearance goals without any obsessive fixation. Their motivation and desire to change their body is pretty surface level. On the other hand, for someone with an eating disorder, their motivation to lose weight is driven by deeper psychological factors other than just health and appearance. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because I've said this so many times on my channel, but eating disorders are coping mechanisms. People develop them and use them as distractions from deeper traumas or holes within oneself. In this way, eating disorders are not that different from many other addictions that you probably have heard of, like alcoholism, drug addictions, and shopping addictions. Eating disorders serve as coping mechanisms because they take up a lot of space in your mind. You're always thinking about what you ate before, what you're going to eat later, how many calories you burnt, random new rules that your brain is creating. They're an effective but very unhealthy way of suppressing any negative thoughts that you don't want to be thinking about or emotions that you don't want to feel. This is why it's so hard for people to recover from eating disorders or to even choose recovery in the first place, because eating disorders serve as their safe place, as a sanctuary. Now, before, when I was talking about people who want to healthily lose weight, they might want to lose weight because they want to change their appearance. And I can imagine that a few of you might be thinking, well, if you're changing your appearance, doesn't that mean you're giving into society's standards? And isn't that disordered? And I definitely understand what you're saying, and I think there's so much gray area around this topic. My personal opinion, however, is that if you depend all of your confidence and happiness on how your body looks, you are likely to fall into disordered eating patterns, because that goes to show that there's something that you're missing that you're trying to fill with something else. You might be unhappy in your life, or you might not have confidence in yourself and who you are. So by starting to change your appearance, it could become a deeper fixation, and it's something that you attach yourself to make you feel safe and worthy, to the point where it's not just changing your appearance, it's engaging in unhealthy and disordered habits. On the other hand, if you just want to change your appearance, but it's not the center of your universe, and you know that that's not the most important thing about you or your life, I believe that you can work towards changing your appearance without developing an eating disorder. Another aspect that's very different between people who want to healthily lose weight versus people who have an eating disorder is their relationship with food. For someone who's trying to lose weight but doesn't have an eating disorder, their food choices may be structured, right? They might want to eat some more nutrient dense foods, maybe some less calorie rich foods, or work on having healthy portion sizes, but generally they're flexible. The occasional indulgence doesn't induce extreme stress or guilt, and they probably won't be very worried about making up for it. They know that the occasional indulgence is part of life and any journey, even weight loss journeys. So, knowing that, they'll move on and the next day they'll continue working towards their goals. On the other hand, for someone with an eating disorder, their relationship with food is incredibly complex. In almost every case, people with eating disorders create very random and extreme rules when it comes to food. They'll create rules about which foods they can and cannot eat, portion sizes, meal timing, and so much more. This makes sense because if you're using your eating disorder as a coping mechanism, filling your brain up with many rules and many things to stress and worry about will serve as an efficient distraction. The biggest problem, though, is that for someone with an eating disorder, these rules are not just guidelines. They are law. If they're not followed, the person will feel incredibly guilty, ashamed, disgusted in themselves, and oftentimes they'll try to make up for it somehow through extreme unhealthy measures. We're not going to expand on those measures because, like I said, I don't want this video to be triggering and I don't want YouTube to age restrict it again because there are so many kids under 18 who need this. Speaking from my personal experience, when I started to challenge my fear foods in recovery, even though I did want recovery at the time, I remember feeling so disgusted and uncomfortable and sad and like I lost any ounce of confidence that I had. Sticking to my safe foods was a safe place and it made me feel more worthy and more confident in who I was. And it was like something I could stand for. You know, some people say, without my job, what would I have? Or if I wasn't a mom and I didn't have children, who would I be? And I felt like without my eating disorder, I didn't know who I would be. So once I was moving away from my eating disorder after so many years of attaching myself to it, I felt like I lost my sense of identity and I lost my confidence. I remember I was too scared to go to school because I just remember thinking, how could I go and face other people knowing that I just ate that? And it's so weird to think about that now. Like what's the shame in eating what I ate? And then showing myself to school. There's no shame in eating anything. There shouldn't be. I really just want to convey how deeply attached someone with an eating disorder might feel to their eating choices and their rules. Because, like I said, these rules are not just guidelines. It's like this law is part of your DNA. Like it feels like you cannot just unfollow those rules. Saying just eat or just have a piece of chocolate or just have a burger, like it just doesn't work like that. Another very big difference between someone who wants to lose weight and someone who has a full-on eating disorder is their thought patterns. Someone who wants to healthily lose weight will, of course, think about their diet or how they're going to lose weight every now and then, but it's not going to dominate their daily life or their self-worth. It's as plain and simple as that. But for someone with an eating disorder, as I mentioned, they will be thinking about their eating disorder pretty much all the time. Well, not their eating disorder, but eating disorder related things. Things that are controlled by their eating disorder. So, contrary to someone who wants to lose weight, for someone with an eating disorder, their eating disorder related thoughts do dominate their daily life and self-worth. And it can be incredibly exhausting. I remember I had a phase where I wanted to eat all vegan food, but I didn't want to eat any processed food. I also didn't want to eat too many carbs, too much fat, or too many calories. Basically, all I could eat was high protein on a vegan diet. And I'm not saying that's impossible. I mean, of course, you can get your protein through a vegan diet, but it's pretty hard to do if you're not going to allow yourself to have a lot of fat or carbs either. And I also didn't want to have anything processed, so I couldn't have that Beyond Meat or much else. So I remember thinking about like what I should have for lunch, and I just ruled out all options literally. And I would think about that for hours. Okay, well I could have tofu. Okay, but that has fat in it. And what would I eat on the side? Just tofu. What else? No rice, no lentils, no this, no that. And I would just think about it and it's exhausting. And every now and then, after all that thinking and all that planning, I would eat the meal and I would still feel guilty later. Another key aspect that's very different between someone who wants to lose weight and someone who has an eating disorder is their behavioral extremes. Someone who wants to lose weight is likely to change their behaviors in a way that will benefit their weight loss goals. But everything they do will usually be within safe, healthy, and moderate amounts. On the other hand, someone with an eating disorder will engage in behaviors to benefit their goals as well, but their behaviors are often, or always, extreme, out of moderation, unhealthy, and unsafe. As I mentioned before, I'm not going to go into depth about behavioral extremes because I don't want this video to be triggering. But the point is that between someone who wants to lose weight and someone who has an eating disorder, the extremes that they will go to achieve their goals is incredibly more unhealthy and extreme for someone who has an eating disorder. Another key difference between someone who wants to lose weight and someone who has an eating disorder is the impact that their goal has on their life. For someone who wants to lose weight, they see their weight loss habits and behaviors as an aspect of their life, a part of their life. But it's not the center of their life, and it doesn't bleed into other parts of their life, or at least in not many other parts of their life. On the other hand, for someone with an eating disorder, their eating disorder habits, thoughts, and behaviors impact every part of their life. Not only do they distract you from the things you don't want to think about or feel, but they also distract you from the good parts of life, to the point where you forget what you do and do not like, you forget to care and tend to your relationships, and you don't really give yourself enough time to think about other aspects of your life, like what you want to do when you grow up, what new hobbies you might want to pick up, what new book you want to try, what new show you want to watch, just to name a few. I said that you forget to engage in your hobbies or to tend to your relationships, but another good word for it is to lose care for those things. You don't care so much about your hobbies anymore or about your relationships because your eating disorder is the center of your life and the thing that you care about most. Also, eating disorders drain your energy, not just because you might be starving yourself, but also because they take up all of your thoughts. You don't really have the energy to devote to anything else. I remember that when I was struggling, I had so little energy that I loved learning about the brain. Like, I would do research on the brain for fun, like a little nerd, but I couldn't do it for more than like 45 minutes a day because I just couldn't focus. It was the same thing with books. I would try to read, but it would take me so long to get through just 10 pages because I couldn't focus on what I was reading. And when friends would come to the door to hang out or anything like that, I would just feel this sense of dread, even though I loved those friends. They were good friends, but I just didn't have the energy to go and talk to them and ask them what they wanted to do or ride my bike. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I'm sure that you've heard about that term hangry. So when you're hungry, you're also angry. And that is a scientific thing. It's not just that you're hungry and you just want food. And I'm not a scientist. I don't know that much about it, but I do know that your blood sugar gets low, your stress increases, you have little energy, and your body is in fight or flight mode. So you don't have the time or the energy to focus on many things or to deal with much. And people with eating disorders typically lose their hunger signals after not eating enough for longer periods of time. But even without those hunger signals, even if their stomach is not saying, hey, I'm hungry, this level of stress and hangriness is still an issue for them anyway. And I felt it within myself when it came to my hobbies and to my relationships, not just with my friends, but also with my parents and the rest of my family. So, to summarize, for someone who wants to lose weight, their new habits and behaviors do not bleed into every aspect of their life, and they are not the center of their life. Whereas for someone with an eating disorder, it's the exact opposite. And the last key difference between someone who wants to lose weight versus someone who has an eating disorder is the self-worth link. For someone who's trying to lose weight, even though they might want to change their appearance, they will not put all of their self-worth in their body shape, their weight, or their habits. They might gain some confidence by achieving the body that they were working towards, but it's not more than a slight boost. Again, it's not the center of their life and it's not the center of who they are, and they know that. On the other hand, for someone with an eating disorder, they do place their self-worth and confidence in their appearance and their habits. For most people with an eating disorder, their eating disorder gives them a sense of pride, purpose, and identity. But what's interesting is that engaging in these eating disorder habits doesn't really result in increased confidence. They'll feel proud to know that they're engaging in these habits, and they'll feel safe being attached to their eating disorder. But at the end of the day, their overall confidence isn't increased. Those are the aspects that I consider key differences between someone who wants to lose weight versus someone who has an eating disorder. Of course, I might not have mentioned all of them, so let me know down below if you think that there are other ones that I missed that you think are very important to discuss. If this video made you realize that you might be struggling with an eating disorder, I encourage you to reach out for help because recovery is something that we cannot do alone. Talk to someone you trust and maybe even look to see a professional. Also, please know I am always here for you. I want my videos to be a source of education and comfort, and I am always here for you in my comments. I read all of them and I answer almost all of them, and I'm always here for you in my Instagram DMs. I have my recovery Instagram linked below. If this video made you realize that someone else might be struggling, I recommend that you reach out to them and express your concerns kindly and without judgment, and make sure you use I statements like, I've noticed that you've been acting a little different, I noticed that you aren't eating as much, etc. This will help them feel less accused and more likely to open up to you. I also just made a YouTube video about how to help someone with an eating disorder when they don't want recovery. It's been posted for a little while now, so you could check that out as well. Again, please let me know in the comments if there are any key differences that I missed, and also please let me know if there are any other future videos that you would like to see from me. I really do read every comment. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons because I would really appreciate you helping my channel grow, not just for my benefit, but also so that we can reach and help more people. Thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye!